Here's an individual who says, God made bananas for man. Why would you not eat it? I must have been talking in this video about the fact that bananas are not a healthy choice for diabetics. He says, well, God made them. Why wouldn't you eat them? Well, my answer is because your body doesn't respond well to carbs, and bananas have a lot of carbs, a lot of sugar. Peanuts are a perfectly fine food, and I eat them. But if I was allergic to peanuts, I wouldn't eat them. Somebody could come along and say, yeah, but God made peanuts. Well, God made peanuts. But that doesn't mean that I can handle peanuts. So just because God made bananas and God made fruit doesn't always mean that you should eat it if you have problem processing carbohydrates and sugars. And of course, we've messed around with a lot of food. The bananas that people eat today are much sweeter than the ones that existed several hundred years ago. They have been bred and crossbred again until they're extra sweet. Why? Because these food manufacturers and the people that sell fruit, they know what people will go for. And if they make a really sweet banana, people will come back and they'll want their brand of banana. Oh, I really enjoyed that. I remember years and years ago, before I ever had diabetic issues, I raised corn. And I had a big yard, I think about 2 acres out in the country. And I had a nice garden and I grew corn. And I ordered a particular corn that had been bred to be extra sweet. And it was some of the best corn I ever ate, corn on the cob. Love it. Don't eat it much anymore, rarely. But in those days, I didn't know anything about sugar and the problems it causes. And when it was time to plant a new crop the next year, guess what? I went for the same corn. Why is that? Because I love the taste. Why? Because it was sweeter than normal corn. Why would you go for some drab, dry corn when you can get a nice, juicy, sweet corn? That's how we humans think. But the problem is sugar is not our friend. And we have to get that, and the sooner we get it, the better. Here's an individual who says, black tea spikes my blood sugar, even if I use stevia. So is it the caffeine that spikes blood sugar? Well, it's a little tricky. He doesn't say when he's having his tea, and so there's some things I don't know. But a lot of times we come to the wrong conclusions because of the time that we test ourselves. For example, when I wake up in the morning, my blood sugar is usually at its lowest. I need to do a video just showing the progression of my blood sugar, but here's what it normally is. It is at its lowest when I wake up. I kind of enjoy waking up and testing my blood sugar immediately because that's about the lowest reading I'm going to get. And it starts to gently rise over the next few hours. So if I get up at 7 in the morning, I may well be in the 80s, 86, 88, whatever. If I tested at 9:30 and I haven't eaten anything, or maybe I've had some bulletproof coffee, but even if I haven't, it's hardly ever in the 80s. It may be in the 90s. If I wait till 10:30, it may be close to 100. And then usually around 11 or 11:30, it starts working its way back down again. So if I have some coffee, whether bulletproof or regular coffee with some stevia, or however I want to make my coffee, and I have it around 9:30, and I have tested myself at 7, and I was at 86, and I have my coffee at 9:30, and then I test myself at 10:30, and now I'm at 98. It's hard to say whether that rise in blood sugar from my morning test is really because of the coffee or because the natural progression of my glucose is always going to be rising in the morning until maybe 11:30 or so, and then it starts going down. So I can't always tell what it's from. The best way, if you want to really know what coffee does to you, however you drink it, with cream, without cream, with stevia, no stevia, the best way to test it is to wait until you're pretty much at a flat level and your glucose is not going anywhere. Like maybe 3 in the afternoon after having a lunch of eggs and bacon. So you're just not going anywhere. You're not going up. You're not going down. You're just pretty much flat. Then have your coffee, then test about an hour later and see where you go. In my case, I don't really feel that coffee does much to me one way or the other. And speaking of that and about the timing of your test, here's another example of why some people may come to the wrong conclusion. I've had many people say, after I eat, I'll go for a walk and my blood sugar will get lower. Well, I know that is true and can be true. I've never found that walking really lowers my glucose very much. Now, I'm talking about me. I'm not talking about you. But for me, blood sugar does not tend to really dive down much or decrease much just because I go for a walk. However, there is a point, particularly if you're eating a higher carb meal, and that's when people love to go for a walk because, man, I just ate some macaroni and cheese and a potato, and it's up there. It's like 180. Let me go for a walk and I'll bring it down. But here's the problem with that. It depends on when you go for that walk. But if you eat your lunch, let's say at 12 o'clock, and you have that higher carb meal, and now you're up to 180, and you decide, well, I'm going to go for a walk, but you take your time, you watch a little TV, and finally you get your running shoes on or your walking shoes, and you go out for a walk at around 1 o'clock or around 12:45, and then you come back at 1:15, and you test your blood sugar. You say, wow, it was at 180, and now it's like 120. That walk brought me down 60 points. But it might not be the walk at all, because your blood sugar is naturally going to hit a peak and then it's going to start coming down. And especially if you've eaten a high carb meal, it's going to often, in many cases, come down rather sharply. So if your walk is delayed a bit after your meal and you look at a 60-point drop over a half an hour, a big part of that 60 points may simply be the fact that your blood glucose was going to go down anyway. And it may not have been the walk at all, or it may have been slightly the walk, but largely because that's just what happens. Glucose never remains static after meals. It's going to go up, it's going to go down. So depending on the timing, you may not be getting as much of an effect as you think you are. Again, the best way would be to watch your spike. But again, if you say, well, my blood glucose has peaked an hour after eating, so I ate at 1, I'm testing at 2, it's at 190, that's too high, I'm going to go for a walk. Guess what? By the time you get done with your walk, it's like another half an hour or more, and your glucose was already headed down from the time you started your walk just naturally. So anyway, some food for thought, no pun intended. I've never been real big on walking after a meal. In fact, I normally do my exercise before breakfast. But if it works for you, that's fine. But make sure it's really the walk that's doing it and not just the fact that the timing of when you go for that walk is just leading to your glucose going down anyway. It was going to go down anyway. All right, well, there's some things to think about. God bless. See you again soon. If you've recently been diagnosed with diabetes and you've just discovered this channel, let me recommend that you go to our Uploads page, which will give you access to every diabetic video we've posted since we began. As you work your way through all our videos, I believe you'll find the help you need. A link to our Uploads page is in the description.